Ooh, how pretty.
Hey, gorgeous. Deborah.
What's going on? Alrighty.
You know, I think the city should give us a picnic.
Have a
What do you
picnic.
think? No, a picnic.
This is Jennifer.
Jen.
Yes.
Oh, so she's smiling right now. Watch it.
She's on a roller, kid. Are you kidding me? What?
Right. Ready.
No, no.
Ready?
Yep.
Battle?
First, I don't have my,
I'm not armed, don't worry.
I've lost my,
Put on our boxing gloves.
Let the record indicate that the board is back in session.
thank
On
you.
next case,
Thank you. The next case is PD 12-01247 BOS Palmyra CPD. This is a request to amend the Palmyra RPD/CPD to deviate from condition 4-934, note 10, to allow multifamily dwelling units in conjunction with the 37,000 square foot commercial use portion of the development. At this time, I'll swear in the witnesses. I believe, can I grab the phone? Thanks. At this time, if I may swear in, all those who are going to speak on this case, I need you to raise your right hand so that I have you testifying for the case. If you don't raise your right hand, I will be asking, and I'll be coming by and asking your name to make sure we have it for the record. Do you swear affirm testimony you're going to provide is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Now, Ms. Dufola Hagan, Ms. Waldrop, Mr. Dolmer, all of you have previously been tendered as experts in land use and planning. Do I have any other experts in the room that I need to know about? Okay. Let me just go by names. Ms. Crespo, I can't believe I said that.
At Walter.
I know. Could you just identify your client for the record?
Certainly. Here with me today is Mr. Stephen Hagenbuckle, who is the property owner of the remaining 3.5 acres in the Palmyra CPD that is currently vacant and not under development order. He is also the managing member of TerraCap, which recently acquired the La Quinta Hotel and performed upwards of $2 million of improvements to that facility here in Bonita Springs.
Okay, let me continue on getting information from citizens. Also, the recording secretary, deputy clerk, is providing handouts. Please fill out the paperwork so we get correct spelling. We would appreciate that. Start, and you'll just say your name for the record, and then you two have not sworn in. Okay.
My name is Frank Percoco. I represent the Golf Club at Palmyra Incorporated, the owner of the abutting property, both south and west of the subject site.
And we'll do testimony. Right now, I just want to get names on the record. Did you swear in? Okay. You did swear in. Can I have your name for the record?
Yes, I'm Marian Ziegler, and I'm a resident of San Remo.
Ziegler.
Ziegler.
Greg Chabursky, also a resident of San Remo.
And you swore in?
Meg Jacobson, a resident of San Remo.
You two did not. Okay. And sir,
Multifamily.
you swore in? No, I keep doing this here. I do. I want to make sure. If anybody did not swear in, but then decides they do wish to testify, that's fine. I'll just swear you in when we start the case. Ms. Waldrop, since you are representing the applicant, you may proceed. Oh, good.
Good morning for the record.
Is that how much is remaining? Remember the memo I sent you?
If you're talking to both, you get stereo.
Good morning for the record, Alexis Crespo with Waldrop Engineering, representing the applicant. I did want to take just a moment to introduce Mr. Hagenbuckle. You may recall him from when we were here last year for a similar amendment to Palmyra. He does have his head office here in Bonita Springs. As I briefly mentioned, he is a committed member of the community, recently purchased the La Quinta Inn Resort and Hotel here and made some significant improvements with the grand opening occurring next week. So we're happy to be back before you again to discuss the build-out of the remaining portion of the Palmyra CPD. The request before you today is very limited in nature. We're seeking the addition of one deviation to the RPD CPD, and that would allow for the existing 23,000 square feet of commercial uses to suffice for the commercial component of the CPD. Your code requires a minimum of 50,000 square feet of commercial when you're going to incorporate a residential component. So we're seeking a reduction to that 50,000 square feet so that the remaining 3.5 acres, which Mr. Hagenbuckle owns, which is that piece right there, could be developed potentially with residential uses. Without this deviation, that property would be required to be developed with commercial uses as it currently stands. So to clarify, the request before you today is not requesting any changes to the master concept plan. We're not requesting any changes to the approved site development regulations, your schedule of uses, and no increase to density or intensity. And actually, this is a significant reduction to the approved density and intensity of the CPD, which I'll get into a bit later in the presentation. This next slide just demonstrates the current build-out of the CPD area. To the south, we have the Renaissance Center commercial component, which is again is approximately 23,000 square feet of non-residential uses and recreational amenities. The approximately 17-acre larger portion of the CPD, which fronts upon Bonita Beach Road, has development order approval in place and is known as the Sorrento development. This is going to be breaking ground this month for the development of 152 multifamily units by the D.R. Horton Development Group. And that leaves Mr. Hagenbuckle's property, which is 3.5 acres in size, and again would be required to be developed with commercial uses until this deviation is approved. In total, the allowable build-out within the CPD area is 120,000 square feet of commercial uses and 380 multifamily units. So upon approval of this deviation, that 3.5 acre property could be developed with approximately 30 to 40 multifamily units, which would be approximately 90 unit reduction to the maximum allowable density and 100,000 square foot reduction to the maximum allowable commercial component. So that really quantifies the reduction in density and intensity that would be approved upon approval of this deviation. This next slide is just a conceptual rendering of the Sorrento building elevation that's being developed in the larger portion of the CPD. This is not as illustrative as the final product type is, but just wanted to give you a sense that this multifamily unit looks more of like a townhouse like the other units within the front portion of Palmyra and will be compatible with the high quality building standards within that community. This next slide is just, again, the deviation request language. We're requesting that the 23,000 square feet suffice in lieu of the 50,000 square feet required to build out with residential unit uses. You may recall this slide from last year when we were here. The reason for this deviation request is there's a strong desire for more residential units in Palmyra due to the strong reputation and quality of that community. And so there's a demand for the residential uses in lieu of commercial. And when you look at surrounding available commercial uses within 2 to 3 miles of the subject property, you have the Burnwood MPD, which is at Bonita Grand and Bonita Beach Road, which has upwards of 300,000 square feet of non-residential uses to service this area of Bonita Springs. And then moving westward of the interstate, you have another approximately 500,000 square feet of available commercial to service this area. So there's an abundance of commercial available, which creates less demand for this subject property developed with commercial uses. And when Steve and I were preparing for the hearing, he also noted that there's a strong draw on regional shopping centers at this time, where you have your Coconut Point, your Gulf Coast Town Center, Miramar, and other such retail commercial uses throughout Lee County that also provides adequate commercial uses for Bonita Springs and the surrounding area. So to conclude, this request will allow Mr. Hagenbuckle the ability to build out the 3.5 acres with residential uses based upon market demand. I do need to clarify, in the staff report, it indicated that 37,000 square feet of commercial uses were constructed. That was what was submitted in our original application. However, we did revisit that number and found that it was actually 23,000 square feet. So I just did want to clarify that 37,000 is incorrect, and the number, in fact, is 23,000 square feet. With that, staff has recommended approval and found the proposal consistent with your land development code and your comprehensive plan. And we would similarly recommend or request your recommendation of approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you explain what the 23,000 square feet is composed of? Is that the existing town center?
Oh, let me do that. That is largely located here with the tennis center. There's a fitness facility, a small cafe type use, recreational uses in that location. That does not include the 37,000 square foot clubhouse, which is slightly outside of the CPD boundary. So that is that kind of Main Street feel. I don't know if you can see that picture at all, but on Matt Teote View Drive, which is accessible by the public with on-street parking and just various facilities. And I should add that we did receive a letter from the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council indicating that the existing commercial did meet the intent of the development of regional impact for that town center CPD area.
Well, does that mean that you're locked in at 23,000 feet, or is there an opportunity to add on to that?
The deviation would allow that remaining parcel to be developed with the residential uses as in Sorrento, but would not preclude commercial development from occurring. But as I said, it's short of rezoning this whole property. This deviation would allow for the development of that 3.5 acres with residential uses. So the process to go from commercial to residential is lengthy and involves a number of amendments. So this was agreed upon with staff of the most efficient way to allow that last 3 acre piece to be developed with residential uses.
So do you anticipate any commercial, or would it all go to residential if that's the way it was heading?
Currently, we do not anticipate commercial.
That's correct. At this point, we anticipate basically a phase 2 to phase 1, which is the Sorrento property.
Mhm.
It's basically just completed for consistency and continuity, and that way the Palmyra overall development of regional impact will be completely built out and finalized, and with a significant downgrade to density and intensity, and which would also reduce potential traffic count exposure. So, we're trying to do the right thing here and be very respectful and listen to, the community. We've worked very closely with the community, and that's why we're, reducing the amount of allowable units. I mean, I think just on the residential side, the total allowable units in both parcels there that are circled in red allowed up to 275 units in total, and at the end it will end up being closer to 192 units, which is about a 30% reduction in total allowable units.
And if it's all residential, it would all be gated as well?
Correct. Gated and walled.
Gated and walled.
That's gated separately from the existing gate, or is this a?
Yes, a separate gate from the existing gate.
Can you point out the, is it the Sorrento? What's the name?
Yeah, Sorrento, it's the
Can
DR
you point that
Horton.
out again now?
That would be where the pointer is where the
Okay.
Sorrento.
So that, this new community is called Sorrento.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just if I can add, when we acquired the properties, it's two separate parcels. So if Alexis, you can show the dividing line, which is Benicio carried forward, it's basically what we're discussing is everything to the left or to the west of that dividing line. If you were to extend Benicio, everything to the right or to the east was acquired by DR Horton, and their plan is to do a phase 2. Into the left portion, just complete it out and make it part of the existing Sorrento community that they're going to break ground on this month. and that's the whole community will be walled with one entry. But because it was two separate parcels, and one had a requirement of we could do up to 100,000 square feet of commercial, as suggested, there's, too much commercial in the area, clearly. That's why many of the smaller commercial strip centers are challenged and struggling, especially in the last 6 years with the about roughly 4 million total square feet. If you add 1.2 million from Gulf Coast Town Center, 1.1 million from Coconut Point, and then the other centers, all in, we added about 4 million square feet in the last 12 years. So the smaller centers, and something such as this, towards the east limits of Bonita Springs Road, would probably not do well, even if it were to be developed commercially. So we feel that, it's for lack of better terms, it's the softest landing to complete all of Palmyra in a nice, consistent way.
But if there was commercial, I think Ms. Crespo said that would be open to the public?
Yes.
If there was commercial? Or
Yes, sir,
blended?
correct,
Okay.
yeah, which would have a higher traffic count, right, of access, and that is a public road, Benicio, so technically, if we made that 100,000 square feet of commercial, people would come in and do commercial activity there, which would disrupt, the calm, quiet feel of Palmyra, which is part of the draw and why it's a special place.
You're gonna have two roads going in there, cut-ins to go into the property, one from the west side, one from the east side?
Into the,
The main,
Yeah.
the entrance to Sorrento will be off Matteotti View. I believe, I don't have the DEO plans available, but the entrance, again, which would be gated, would be somewhere around this area
Right.
to access the community, and then through Sorrento, this phase could be accessed.
And there's, it shows here two, a cut in here and a cut in there, so. It's in the packet.
Are you referring?
that's the existing entry is Benicio right now.
Will that be
It's the
eliminated?
developer's intent, D.R. Horton, to wall off the entire community. That's their intent.
That road will be eliminated then, right? That cut in?
I think it would stop right there.
Would not connect all the way to
board-
Bonita.
Right, it's adjacent to a very nice little park with a gazebo, and they actually have parking slots going along Benicio in the area that it's currently paved, and they want to maintain that. It's lit, and they have parking there, so,
So the main entrance will be over to the east of it then?
correct.
Don't know, you might want to
Yes,
double
sir.
check. Deviation.
How would you progress with the development? How many units at a time would be built?
Right now, a lot of it will be market-driven, as will Phase 1. I don't represent D.R. Horton, who acquired Phase 1 from us. Their intent is to have it fully available. They break ground this month. Their intent is to have it fully available for a full season starting next year, with a goal of a 2-year build-out of the community of the 152 units in Phase 1. Phase 2 would be somewhat market-driven, where we would work with them, and probably they wouldn't even finalize acquisition for another year from today, and then it would take them, because it's only 40 units, my guess would be it'd be all at one time. But again, it would be market-driven. So they may put in the infrastructure and the pads, but not erect the buildings until they had units sold. But there's quite a bit of resurging momentum currently in the residential markets, as you're all well aware. So it's anticipated that in 2 years that will remain strong.
Would there be models and a sales office?
They would be consistent, because this is a Phase 2, those would already be offered in Phase 1, so this is just an extension of Phase 1. So again, I can't speak for them, but I would anticipate they would utilize the same sales center because the product will be the same.
Okay.
And typically, you want those model units closest to the access
they-
point of the community, so
Right.
it would be very unlikely that they would want to put those in Phase 2.
And I think by the time they get there, that phase one will be pretty mature and far along with residents actually living in there. So to her point, they would keep that activity up front.
Thank you.
Yep. I was going to see development code.
There is no 9421E3.
Hello again. For the record, Jennifer Dufala Hagan, planner with Community Development. Again, my presentation will be brief since Alexis did most of the overview, but for the record, the request before you is to amend the existing Palmyra RPD CPD to deviate from Land Development Code 4-934 Note 10, which is the commercial square footage requirement, to permit multifamily dwelling units in conjunction with the existing 23,000 square feet of commercial uses. Staff recommends approval of the applicant's request. For the record, again, the future land use designation of the property is moderate density mixed-use plan development. It falls within a residential commercial plan development, and the subject property, the 3.5 acres, is cleared and vacant. Again, the area location map, this kind of further clarifies the difference between the two properties. Here is the Sorrento portion. The development order is in right now for 152 units. However, the deviation for this subject application that we're discussing applies just to the 3.5 acres. So this just further clarifies that for you. Again, to date, the CPD portion of Palmyra has been developed with approximately 23,000 square feet of non-residential uses. This is what Alexis spoke to. It includes the community's residents' fitness facilities, the active recreational amenities, restaurants, cafe, specialty retail, and any other non-residential ancillary uses. However, this does not include the existing commercial uses known as the golf house clubhouse, which is located outside of the CPD zoning district and contains an additional 37,000 square feet. So with this, staff basically felt that the intent of the commercial plan development is met. Again, the Regional Planning Council did provide a letter to the applicant stating that this change would not trigger a notice of proposed change for the overall DRI. It is, again, just asking to move forward with a multifamily product instead of the commercial requirement of 50,000 square feet. So if you approve this request, what you are thereby approving is the multifamily residential component of the proposed development to be able to go in prior to and if any commercial in the future. So that is basically the gist of this request. Staff feels that this deviation is appropriate. Again, the only thing you are voting in favor for or approving would be the deviation. None of the schedule of uses, the site development, the master concept plan, any of the prior approved uses are not subject to change. The only thing that you are approving is this deviation request. So with that said, the approval of this deviation would allow the applicant continued flexibility to develop the remaining portion of the subject property with a multifamily dwelling unit product. So again, it's short and sweet. We feel the request is short and sweet. It's a pretty simple one, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
What do you anticipate would be the approximate cost per unit, per housing unit?
end sale unit?
Yeah,
Cost of construction or cost of sale?
Sale, selling price.
It's tough to say in a rising market, but my guess would be when this phase is addressed, which would be probably 2 years from now, we'd be looking in the 280 to 340 range.
And that's as it was depicted in the picture that you showed?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Have any questions at this time from the board? Okay. At this point in time, go ahead.
Before you open the record for the public, I just want to go over just some differences between the last time we did this ordinance in 2011 versus what we've done now, just because it feels a little bit like deja vu. Currently, we're looking at the zoning note to close out all of the commercial. Previously, you did a deviation, so there's a deviation 1 that we'll have in the ordinance as opposed to, and this will be deviation 2, and that was a deviation from 4-931E3, which was ancillary uses. So that would allow, prior to the 50,000, it would allow some multifamilies. This is just closure to have the final fulfillment of all of the commercial. I mean, there might be a possibility of commercial in the future, but it does not mandate commercial in the future. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear, because I know one of the council members asked me some questions on it and was confused.
Well said.
At this point in time, I'd like to open the public portion of this application. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against the applicant? Please step forward.
Frank Percoco from Palmyra. On behalf of our membership, I would like to say that we have no objection to the deviation that's before you today, specifically with respect to this. And I say specifically, and that's because we have not seen a copy of the development order before. That's with respect to Sorrento itself. There are other concerns amongst our residents that have yet to be resolved in terms of the impact on Palmyra now, traffic and things of that nature that we have to be apprised of, which I think is the next step. So our purpose here today is appear before you so that we can speak at further meetings in this regard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Meg Jacobson, and I live in the other community, San Remo, that is right near this property. I think, as an individual, I'm not testifying on behalf of my community, I'm very much in favor of changing it from commercial to residential. That just feels like it's a better use of the community, and so we have no objection to that. However, and I don't know that this is the place or not, but we are really, really concerned about the traffic coming in. What you're going to see, well, Audrey, could anybody put that up, it shows where the location is, or Jennifer? Yeah, that's great. If you look to the right, which is the east, there's a little street called Mattiati. It's only one lane. And Sorrento is going to be accessed through that one lane, as well as our community, San Remo, and the back end of Palmyra. So we don't think the traffic study actually reflects what's really going to happen, and we think there's going to be a lot of blockage. Originally, as I understand it, the commercial development was going to enter from Bonita Beach Road. Is that correct? I think it was going to enter through Bonita Beach Road, which would mean the traffic wouldn't get as far as our Mattiati. We just would like to make sure that you, and if this is the right place for it, put in a requirement that the new land be included in the traffic study. Because I think right now the traffic study is only including the first part of Sorrento, the 152 units. I don't know that it includes, and I'm not saying it does or doesn't, I don't think it does. It doesn't include the traffic that would come from Sorrento Phase 2. So we think that'd be very important that that all be considered, since it's all going to the same place. It's a little after the fact to consider it in 2 years. It really ought to be part of the whole plan to see what will the traffic impact be, because that's our biggest concern is traffic impact. Commercial will never be successful there, so I'd rather not see empty stores, much rather see nice homes. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Ann Ziegler. I'm also a resident of San Remo, like Meg. Generally speaking, as a resident, as an individual, and I know that many of my fellow citizens agree with me, I favor the annexation of Phase 2, the integration of the 3.5 acres with the Phase 1 Sorrento. I think it would be an asset rather than, like Meg said, there's really nothing commercially viable that could go in there. But I also want to reiterate we have had and have expressed grave concerns ever since we became aware that Sorrento D.R. Horton would go in there and build this project about the traffic impact, which most of the traffic will be going over, all of the traffic actually, the way it looks now, will be going over Mattiardi View, which would be between Sorrento and us, San Remo, and especially during the construction phase, when all that commercial traffic will be going in and out there. And it is really not clear to me how that would work at this time. And I would like some clarification on if Phase 2 is annexed to Phase 1, is there going to be a separate entrance on the other side, and how would that work?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to address those?
Certainly. Getting back to Ms. Jacobson's comment, certainly a DO will be required to construct Phase 2 of Sorrento. At that time, a traffic impact statement will be submitted by the applicant, and that will determine, based on the entrance at Mattiardi View, if upgrades to that roadway are required, if turn lanes are required, and so that will be fully vetted at that time. So that will be a requirement. And the second question was regarding access to Benicia, through Benicia, if that would connect to Bonita Beach Road.
Mm-hmm.
And based on Palmyra's main entrance, the gated entrance further west of Mattiardi View, the spacing is no longer there. I think they're just a couple 100 feet apart at this point. So I think that was based upon a true town center build out of 120,000 square feet and 380 units. Now that the density is much less and the intensity is much less, the traffic statements thus far as indicated Mattiardi View is the appropriate access, and that would no longer be warranted based on the build out of that CPD. And I would defer to staff if they have any additional background on that access point.
Again, a traffic impact study waiver was requested as part of this application. Since it is an overall reduction in intensity, staff did not feel at this time a traffic impact study was necessary. However, Ms. Crispo is correct that at time of development that will all be reviewed and necessary at that time when a more determined product is in front of staff to be able to evaluate it. But at this time, since there was a reduction in the overall intensity in the proposed development, it did not warrant an updated traffic impact statement.
Could you speak to the question about construction traffic during Horton's work on the project?
Are you aware of their construction access?
It's a question that that lady asked.
I don't know the answer to that.
And that's not necessarily part of this application that we'd be reviewing, though. That's something that would be looked at development order, and Sorrento development order is being, looked at by staff at this time,
Right,
but
I was
not
just trying
a
to get an
zoning
answer
issue.
for her. Yeah.
Jennifer, you're saying that you will not consider this Phase 2 in this year's traffic study?
Correct. That's not part of this request. However, that will be looked at very specifically at time of development order when the actual product count comes in, and that can be determined at a more specific level. And John can speak at it more.
there be a hearing on that, or is that just something?
Hold on.
Hold on, please. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, right now, they're showing their construction entrance off Mattiati. However, we are working with the applicant so that, and the County Department of Transportation to get a construction entrance off of Bonita Beach Road. That way it prevents construction traffic from traveling through those residential streets. That has not been accomplished yet, but it is a goal that we are working towards. If that answers the question. And with phase two, they're correct. All of their impacts for the additional units will be submitted and reviewed at the time that application is turned into the city.
Let me ask this question, will another hearing be made on that particular subject?
I can't answer anything unless it's on the record, sir, so we will need you to step up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Lou Bobroff. I have not been sworn in, but my question is just...
Let me have you raise your right hand to be sworn in. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're going to provide today is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, sir.
I just want to know, will there be a hearing in reference to the traffic flow, or will it be decided by the board or your department?
It will be reviewed by staff. There will not be a public hearing at that time, but staff would be happy to notify any interested parties when that application comes in front of staff for your review. It is public, I'm not sorry, I can't, it's public record. Thank you, I kept saying notice, but there will not be a public notice sent out nor a hearing, but it is public record. So if you give us our information, we can make sure that you're notified. Mhm. Are there any other questions from the board?
No, did you shut off the public hearing?
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please come forward.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony you're going to provide is truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please proceed.
My name is Emmett Potter. I'm a resident at Palmyra, and looking at this, I also did development in Maryland, and you know, I'm 100% in favor of it. I think removing the commercial, it absolutely makes the greatest sense you could do. There's just no need for it. We actually have one unit in Palmyra, the Pronto Grill, that's empty, and we'd love to rent it, but nobody really wants it, you know. So I hope that it works out for these guys. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no additional questions from the audience, I'd like to close the public portion. Audrey, can you review just one more time what we're voting on?
Yes, it would be to add one deviation. It'll be deviation 2 because you did another deviation previously in 2011. That deviation and all the other conditions in Palmyra will remain the same. Deviation 2 would provide relief from LDC Section 4-934, Note 10, which requires townhouses, multifamily buildings to be permitted only in conjunction with at least 50,000 square feet or more commercial or industrial uses, to allow the multifamily to be built with 27,000 square feet of commercial uses within the Palmyra Town Center. 23,000, oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation with conditions and deviations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roger Brunswick,
In favor?
Pete Pastori,
Yes.
Richard Donnelly,
Yes.
Frank Lyles,
Yes.
Chairman Nussbaum,
Yes.
Robert Inserpi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mark,
We have the minutes.
And that concludes
Of
today's
the,
cases.
that's fancy.
If minutes.
Okay, sure.
See, you were right.
Before everybody leaves.
Yeah.
We have one more item on the agenda.
Is that the woman thing?
Did everybody get a copy of our minutes from the August 14th meeting?
Yes.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstained.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Don't leave.